effective solutions to erode and defy implicit biases and institutionalized racism that produces generational poverty and injustice for too many of us. Tonight, we have a stellar part of our community to answer questions from our participants, and also to address how their companies, their entities are supporting our people through this COVID crisis beyond survival. The information you will learn will share how we can thrive beyond COVID. So we'll start with our panelists. Ms. Senia Bosman is President and CEO of the Community Action Agency of St. Louis, better known as CAASTL, a position she has held for over 4 years. CAASTL is a not-for-profit organization located in Overland, Missouri, and their mission is to end poverty. CAASTL currently serves more than 40,000 customers living at or below the poverty line in St. Louis County. Before CAASTL, Senia was a senior vice president at the YMCA of Greater St. Louis, where she provided direction and oversight for global diversity and inclusion, government relations and public policy, board development, child care services, and urban core programming. Senia has served on a number of boards, including the Deaconess Foundation and the United Way of Greater St. Louis. She currently serves on the St. Louis County Workforce Development Board, the St. Louis Zoo Board, and the National Community Action Partnership Board. So we welcome Senia. We also have a creative communicator in Ms. Vanessa Cooksey. She's a systems thinker, future-focused strategist, and transformational leader. Vanessa Cooksey has worked for 14 different companies in private and not-for-profit and government sectors, including Mary Kay Cosmetics, Cartoon Network, the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office, Save-A-Lot Food Stores, Anheuser-Busch, Wells Fargo, and Spire. She recently joined Washington University in St. Louis as a director of strategic communications and student engagement for University College. Vanessa believes that her 3 decades of continuous community service is the foundation of her personal and professional success. She currently serves in leadership roles on the board of directors for the SIFMA Foundation for Investor Education, Stowe State University, the Deaconess Foundation, Vote, Run, Lead, Mercy Health, and the St. Louis Public Schools Foundation. Vanessa earned a bachelor's degree in radio, TV film from the University of Texas at Austin, and a master's degree in business administration from Webster University. Vanessa has studied in France, the Caribbean, Mexico, China, Ireland, Cuba, Japan, Rwanda, and England. She enjoys cooking nutritional recipes and growing food in her hydroponic tower garden for her family and friends. She introduced me to Tower Garden too. Although Vanessa has received more than 50 national and local awards for her innovative business and community work, including the 2016 Eisenhower Fellowship and the 2018 St. Louis American Foundation's Corporate Executive of the Year, she believes her greatest rewards come from being a wife to Antonio, mother to Andrew, and daughter to Miss Beverly Foster. Thank you, Vanessa. We also have Miranda Witherspoon Richardson. MPPA is principal and CEO of MWR Consulting. Ms. Witherspoon Richardson earned her Master's of Public Policy with a concentration on nonprofit management and leadership from the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and a Bachelor of Science in Healthcare Administration and Planning from TSU. Mrs. Witherspoon Richardson brings over a decade of experience working in the social service, philanthropic, and community health fields. Throughout her career, Ms. Witherspoon Richardson has worked to improve the communities she serves. She's a published author and adjunct professor at Missouri Baptist University and Webster University, which are both located in St. Louis, Missouri. Currently, she is a member of Emergency Practitioners in Philanthropy, EPIP, Association of Black Foundation Executives, and a professionals learning about community, equity, and smart growth, Places alum. Places is designed for a year-long fellowship program that offers tools, knowledge, and best practices to enhance funder grant-making decisions in ways that are responsive to the needs and assets of low-income neighborhoods and communities of color. Ms. Witherspoon Richardson is also the founder of Black Funders, which we are anxious to learn more about. So thank you, Miranda, for joining us.
Thank you.
So because we are so rich with having you guys here and the knowledge that we hope to gain, we are going to quickly transition into some of the questions and gather more information from you guys about the specifics that your organizations bring to our communities. So I'll put this out to the panel and we can just go through, each of you. And if you could share, what are options for individuals in underserved communities to continue their education or start a business or get a job training in this COVID-19 era? Senia, do you have any insight as to what your organization is doing, in transitioning into a COVID era and being able to offer your services?
Yes, Kayla, I do. Actually, Community Action Agency, CAASTL, you referenced in my bio that our mission is to end poverty. And poverty has many faces. And so when individuals that are low income or marginalized face circumstances, they need a number of different resources to help them transition. And of course, education and jobs is primary. So we have education programs, we have GED programs, for young adults. We also have a job readiness program. We sponsor job fairs. We work with reentry citizens that are returning citizens from being incarcerated. And then we provide those wraparound services to go with that. Because having a job and having all the other resources that we talked about in the education, once you get into that field and you're trying to pull yourselves up, then you need other resources that we provide, like utility assistance and food security, as well as weatherizing homes and so forth. So we provide a wraparound services to help all individuals, and education is key. And as we all know, transportation is another major issue, and we support that area for our customers as well.
So it's not by chance that we have, the three of you on this webinar, because your services are pretty diverse. With you offering the wraparound services, the job training, a more cumulative approach to, ending poverty, that is, a part of our listening base and definitely a big part of what our underserved communities are in need of. Vanessa, can you speak more in regards to, academia and, what transitions you guys are making between, with your engagement with Harris Stowe and the University College in the COVID-19 era?
Yes, thank you. Really excited, particularly to share first about Harris Stowe. Harris Stowe State University is the most affordable bachelor's degree in the state of Missouri. We are mission driven and we want to help both traditional undergrad students as well as adults who may have some college but need to finish a degree and or continue their education by offering quality and affordable higher education solutions. We also have a new president, Dr. Corey Bradford, who comes to us from Prairie View University in Texas, and he has a really big vision to ensure that Harris Stowe is a great community partner and really meeting our students where they are. So I am a champion. I serve on the Board of Regents for Harris Stowe and know that the power of an HBCU, while many of our students are African American, we have a very diverse population of students, and we want to make sure that we are offering quality education at an affordable rate. For Washington University in St. Louis, we have lots of options for working adults as well as traditional undergraduate students. We have a really exciting new program that we're developing in partnership with the Deaconess Foundation to support mid-level managers in the nonprofit sector to continue their education in human resources and nonprofit management. And so our chancellor, Andrew Martin, is committed that WashU is not only in St. Louis, but for St. Louis. And so we are looking across our university to ensure that we are providing education resources for people in St. Louis.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Miranda, with some progression there, as a 20+ year entrepreneur, definitely want to see how you know, our Black community has options in regards to building and you know, surviving as business owners. Can you speak to Black funders' role with in that regard?
Yes, so our work is really centered around supporting nonprofit organizations and in particular Black-led nonprofit organizations. As you all are probably aware, these organizations are often under-resourced for various reasons. And so we want to be a vehicle to support Black-led nonprofit organizations through grants and also through time and talent. And so grant making is one way to allocate funds to support operations for organizations, which are often needed without having strings attached to a particular funding program or priority. But then also, how do we get back our time and our talent so that we can help these organizations remain viable assets in the community? And so with that, post-COVID or during COVID, we have been focused on webinar series to help make sure that we are sharing information and resources that will help to support Black-led nonprofit organizations. And we'll plan to continue this conversation as we prepare for our August grant making cycle as well. So really just trying to be intentional about ways to provide support and resources and expertise to Black-led nonprofit organizations at no cost.
So in COVID-19, what challenges have you incurred with your mission for your organization?
What was the question? Can you repeat the question?
In the COVID-19 era, have you incurred specific challenges in your work to support these entities?
So one thing we're really focused on in terms of Black Funders of St. Louis is raising funds, because what we see is that, you know, generally speaking, when you're applying for grant dollars, whether it's operational or whether it's tied to a particular project or program, there's usually strings attached. And so one thing we want to be intentional about is how do we allocate funds without attaching strings to the funding so that organizations can keep the lights on, keep people on payroll, take care of what they need to take care of as an organization without feeling like, okay, I have to mission creep or I have to shift to get this funding or whatnot, but really thinking about funding beyond one time, but also thinking about ways to be intentional with the funding so that it does help organizations in a way that is most meaningful for them.
I'd like to add on to that comment and say just how proud I am of the nonprofit community and the higher ed community in St. Louis and how we responded to COVID and the needs of our communities, particularly higher ed institutions, really centered the safety of our students, faculty, and staff. And so many of our schools, Harris Stowe, WashU, really worked very diligently and quickly, because oftentimes higher ed has the stigma of moving really slow. But when the issue of COVID-19 and its spread came, we all put our students and our faculty and staff first, and their safety was paramount. So we moved to online courses and really were intentional about making sure that we provided quality education in an online format so that students could get finished. And particularly for our seniors who weren't able to have traditional graduation ceremonies, really thinking about how can we celebrate this big accomplishment. So just wanted to tip my hat to higher ed and the nonprofit community for being so responsive and flexible to keep our community safe.
Let me ask, do you think that that's because there's been a more cumulative approach to how we support our Black communities? Have you guys seen growth in that regard, that there's more collaboration versus isolation and entities being fragmented in their approach?
You know, I can certainly speak to that. I certainly have. You know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit We receive federal dollars, but we're not a federal agency. And the services we provide are no cost to any of our customers. But there are a number of services that, when I talked about the wraparound services that we provide, there are a number of services that we don't provide. And when we don't have those services, we're able to collaborate and refer customers so that there's no disconnect in them being helped during that time. And during COVID, the services that we provide, as well as education services that Vanessa spoke of and what Miranda talked about, all those services are needed now more than ever. And so collectively, we are a strong network of nonprofit organizations. And so as a result of that, we have to do that because our mission and our drive is to help people that need us and help people to transition from different circumstances. And they need to be educated to get jobs. And then they need the feasibility of jobs and financials. So I've certainly seen that. And I know that from my perspective, we have reached out more to collaborate with other organizations. And I plan to collaborate with these two ladies even more following this webinar.
So can each of you speak to gaps that you've identified that are in dire need to be successful in the delivery of local and underserved communities? I've heard from many that some of our communities are hard to reach with the as far as outreach and awareness. What are ways that we who are active in our communities can support you and be aware of gaps that that kind of eroded, your mission and your outreach efforts? Miranda,
I think earlier we talked about funding is always a gap, particularly when you're serving even more people and the needs are so diverse. And so as a result of that, funding is always there. But then there's other resources. During this COVID pandemic, there's a need for people having all types of support services, mental health, childcare, and things like that. And so there's funding needed because, and transportation. And so many of the individuals, particularly those we serve, because they're at or below the federal poverty guidelines, 125% or below of poverty. And so they don't have all of those resources. And then those that are middle income, due to the pandemic, they won't be able to easily bounce back from this. And so we all will be able to collaborate to help support them through that transition. It's the only way that individuals can have a quality of life as we connect together to help serve them.
So traditionally with not-for-profits, Miranda, can you speak to how COVID has affected their fundraising efforts? Different drives and initiatives where there's been gatherings of people. COVID has kind of put a squash on that. What other means are your entities using to raise funds?
I think people are tapping into social media more. So COVID is happening now. We're in the house more. And so in some ways we're plugged into our phones, our laptops, our iPads, and we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter a lot more now probably than before, given that we're in the house. And so entertainment activities look a lot different. And so I think that nonprofits are doing the best that they can to utilize social media platforms in terms of being able to raise money, but then also to be able to tell their story. So a big part of fundraising is how you tell the story. So that storytelling piece is really important. I've seen some invitations for some fundraising events where they're utilizing the St. Louis Mill, which apparently has like a drive-in kind of setup going on. So people, I guess, can stay in their car. There's some social distancing that's taking place. But I would think overall, people are thinking about this from a standpoint of what does this mean moving forward? Are people going to want to show up for a silent auction with 200 or 300 people in the fall? And so people are having to revamp what that means. And so I think utilizing social media has been one way that nonprofit organizations have been able to share more about their organizations and then also be able to raise money. But they're getting very creative with the ideas around, we already had this plan. How do we continue given that people have purchased tickets and so forth, or we want to continue the efforts? And so utilizing different types of venues like I just named, the St. Louis Mills with the drive-in situation, to be able to still raise money. Because at the end of the day, I mean, these organizations, they need funding. And so there's only so much money to go around. And so organizations are really trying to get creative with how they can raise awareness about their organization as well as funds.
Vanessa,
I feel like I've noticed 5 gaps, particularly for within our Black community. The first being technology. You know, I serve on the St. Louis Public Schools Foundation Board. My child goes to New City Schools, and there's, you know, clearly a gap when it comes to technology across our region, access to broadband. If I had to umbrella term what the key issues would be access to reliable technology. There's clearly a skills gap in terms of the jobs that are deemed essential, where there's growth, where layoffs have been. You know, there's a lot of inequity around how we over-index in certain industries and jobs. So there's a skills gap and clearly a healthcare gap. I mean, when this COVID thing started hitting, much of the issues around death and COVID-related deaths were Black people with limited access to healthcare and comorbidities. So having a conversation about the gaps in health are really important. And then the last two, I would say, you know, there's gaps in leadership. You know, unfortunately, our region is still very fragmented. And over time, I've seen, you know, an increase in collaboration, but we've got to hold our electeds accountable and keep them focused on what's important for the community and the people that they serve. And then lastly, a gap in finances, people's access to dollars and what they can afford and can't afford, and some of the really tough choices that they've had to make. So all of that comes down to access to opportunity.
So there's been a lot of awareness as far as how Black dollars are spent and, you know, how they support our communities. Does it affect your delivery of service, the lack of our tax base in our communities and the lack of education as to how Black people become financially savvy in their spending as well as their investing?
I can speak directly to the issue with regard to Harris Stowe. We are a public school part of the Missouri system, and over the last 5 years, we have received significant budget cuts. And now with the strain on our economy, we'll be experiencing even more budget cuts, which, you know, is across the board. But, you know, what's bad in one space is worse in another. And, you know, we have some challenges that we're overcoming in the WashU front. So for higher ed, I think that, you know, there's definitely a need to think more creatively about funding and accessing students in ways that we can serve them. But there's certainly a need for greater accountability, you know, with our electeds and how our tax dollars are being spent.
Senior, has there been any change in your funding stream in recent times? Has there been any reallocation of monies that were allocated to your entity that are potentially at risk?
We have not experienced any funding cuts. As I mentioned earlier, we are, our major funding source is Community Services Block Grant. And so those funds are designated for community action agencies around the country. There's 1,000 of us around the country, 19 in the state of Missouri. So there are dollars that are designated to us so that we put those dollars back into the community to help individuals transition. So, you know, but Congress is always in charge, right? So we have not experienced that of yet, but I'm not going to sit here and be comfortable and say that won't ever happen. There was also some CARES funding as a result of COVID. That was additional funding that was provided to community service agencies. And what, you know, what was desired is that we take that funding and go deeper with the programs and services we already offer. Again, there's no cost to any of our customers for the service that they receive. But with the need being so great and with it growing, you can run out of funding. And so we haven't experienced that just yet. But, you know, as our federal government continues to transition itself through different mediums, you know, that's something that, you know, it could happen in the future. But right now, we feel very confident and comfortable serving the customers that need us.
And I did want to add, and thank you, Senior, for saying that both Harris Stowe and higher education institutions did receive CARES funding, and that definitely made a difference
Yes.
for us. So I didn't want to paint a complete picture of doom and gloom. We have resources and support, but we, just as Senior said, we can't afford to rest on our laurels. We have to be creative.
Yes. So in your involvement with St. Louis Public Schools, one of the major challenges some years, you know, back was that the city lost a lot of its tax base. Does that continue to be an issue for our schools to be well suited to educate our children?
Not at the same rate. I think that one of the things that we are grateful for and seeing benefit from is the investment from individuals and business from the community into the St. Louis Public Schools and education in general. You know, St. Louis has broader issues economically around our development, but we have seen some growth within the Midtown corridor that has been beneficial.
Miranda, can you speak to how you guys identify the not-for-profits that you support and what type of objective overall your entity has with giving the support?
Absolutely. So Black Funders of St. Louis, we are a giving circle. So a giving circle, in other words, a non-traditional form of philanthropy. So our mission is really around supporting the transformation and well-being of Black people and Black communities here in St. Louis metropolitan area. And so, as you mentioned earlier, we were founded in 2016, operationalized in 2017, and our work really centers around collectively pulling resources. And so that's time, talent, and treasure. And so with that, we, like I mentioned earlier, we invest back into Black-led nonprofit organizations. And so for us, we define Black-led as the president, CEO, executive director identifies as Black. And so we support organizations in two ways, awarding grants and then also giving back our time and our talent. And so for our support, the Giving Circle is made up of Black individuals and or couples who identify as Black, and we're supporting Black-led nonprofit organizations. And so with that, our membership, we are making decisions for our community. So Black people are making decisions for Black people. And so that is why it's so important and intentional that Black membership be a part of this work. And so we're leading this work. And so anyone can give to support our mission around supporting the transformation of Black people. But in terms of decision-making, it's Black people making decisions for Black people. And we're supporting Black-led nonprofit organizations.
This is a question that came up that our current president says he was responsible for highlighting Juneteenth. So I'd like to pose to each of you how you celebrated and acknowledged Juneteenth this year, last week.
I'm happy to go first.
Yeah.
Since it was on a Friday, I did work, so I wanted to keep my family roof over our head. But one of the things that, you know, I've traditionally done around celebrating Juneteenth is just reading. I mean, we have to educate ourselves. We have to engage. I spent time reflecting, reading, and writing. And for me also, I feel like, well, this is a great acknowledgement. I feel like Kwanzaa and practicing the principles, the 7 principles, is even better. So it's more than just these isolated holidays. It's the lifestyle and it's the culture that need transformation.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I'll add Vanessa's response. Like for me, I did work, but also really focus a lot on meditation that day and celebration. There's a lot going on right now in our society, but I still think that it's very important that we acknowledge what is going on, but we also celebrate this journey. In terms of Juneteenth, I know for myself, I have personally committed to supporting, and also when I say supporting, initially investment opportunities into some Black businesses that are looking to start their dream. And so for me, I think it's really important around cooperative economics. And so really being intentional with that time. And so Juneteenth was just a reminder of why this is so important. And so really pushing me to make sure that this happens. And so really being intentional with my time.
Senior?
Yes, and I worked as well, so we all worked, but I had an opportunity, through this. I serve on, I think I mentioned that there are 19 community action agencies in the state of Missouri. And then I'm on the national board of Community Action Agency. And so there are not many faces that look like me on either of those entities. And so I took the opportunity to educate and create awareness. So forwarding information, writing newsletters and comments about what's happening in the world today, because even though we're celebrating, the emancipation and slavery ending, look at what's happening around us today. Some of those same circumstances that we celebrated and fought for, we're still having to fight for it. And so to educate people that don't really understand that journey was what I did in celebrating Juneteenth. So I celebrated self-education and awareness, and I did work, but I took the time to help those who may not be aware to understand what it's really about and what it really means.
So in the news, we've seen the death of George Floyd really promote a revolt in our country and beyond. What are ways that we can support our youth through your agencies in thriving? It's so important that we get to a place where we survive COVID, but looking beyond COVID and being proactive in preparing to thrive beyond COVID. Can you each speak to how your entities and your involvement in the community provides resources and engagement in that regard?
I'm happy to go first. I think particularly for St. Louis in this moment, it is so important for us to have a healthy and strong, thriving HBCU in Harris-Stowe. And what that provides is not only the education, but the culture and the care that our young people need. And so that's why I work tirelessly on the board to help the university be successful. The other thing that I think that we can do, and I've had several conversations about this, because in this moment, oftentimes people are looking for answers and solutions and plans. And I think that St. Louis is uniquely positioned to be a beacon in this moment, because we have two plans in particular that were created to move us forward. The Forsake of All report came out in, I believe, 2013 and listed 6 recommendations, particularly around healthcare and supporting our youth. And then, of course, in 2015, we had our Forward Through Ferguson plan with very clear recommendations. So a plan that was created during times of peace, and then a plan that was created during times of crisis. We've got the best of both worlds. And I encourage, my colleagues and leaders, we don't need to research and report and do any other thing. We've got 2 really good plans with almost 200 recommendations. And if we could even just get some of them done, we'd be in a much better place. So my encouragement is, let's do the work that we know works.
And with that, if you don't mind, Vanessa, I would add, that we should allow the youth to lead A lot of times we will say, oh, this was youth driven, or we have an advisory board for youth. But in terms of youth leading the work, they're around the table, they're the decision makers, they're using their ideas to think about how they can move the needle to impact change. And I've seen several times where youth are not utilized in a way that really allows them to show up and to lead the work. And so I see so many opportunities where we can utilize youth and allow them to lead the charge.
That's right. Absolutely.
Tanya, with your served population, can you share what percentage is 27 and under? Do you have a large percentage of participants who are in that younger generation?
We have, so we serve the whole family. And so by doing that, you are serving the younger people. So when you provide utility assistance for the family, keeping the lights on, providing heat and water for the families, you're helping the whole family. The other part of that is looking at leadership. And I think my colleagues have mentioned that leadership for young people. If you look at the protests that have been occurring around the world, and you look at the age groups, a majority of them are, the younger generation. And so they need a voice. And I think one of the things that we can do, and we're all collectively committed to that, is allow young people to have a voice. We need to listen to them. We need to help guide, as much as we can, but providing those necessary resources, first of all, in the home, food insecurity. If young people don't have food at home, then it's hard for them to go to school. It's hard for them to be able to function properly. And it enhances the anger and outbursts that they may have. But also they need the support of community resources. So it may not be in the homes for many young people. And so we as nonprofits and community leaders can try to work collectively to provide that opportunity for our young people to have a voice. But I am just amazed at when I look at the protesters, as I said, around the world, and I look at the age groups, I'm like, oh my gosh. So we talk about the young people being our future. We are seeing that, but they need that support. They need that backbone. And so that's what I think. We have a teen leaders program where we help young people in underserved communities, provide them a voice to understand advocacy, to understand how to speak out if they want to better their community. We need more of that though. And so, we can provide the program, but after the program is done, you want to release them into doing the things that you hope they will continue to do, but they need some other resources to help facilitate that and make it successful. So I think young people need a voice. They need someone to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
So Vanessa, in you speaking about the Ferguson Initiative, is there anything specific to our young developing leaders to support their engagement, their capacity, their growth?
I think the whole report and the way that it's organized has opportunities for youth to plug in, whether it's Opportunity to Thrive, Just for Kids. The most important thing I think we can do now is be consistent, because oftentimes when occurrences happen, we get focused for a season, and that season is typically generated by the news cycle, and then things calm down and we go back to our normal ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
I think this moment is inviting us to create a new normal and consistently look around and seek out young people, making sure that they stay at the table and have the resources to stay committed and to stay engaged. So I'm not as concerned about what and how. It's just the continuation and the sustainability of being intentional, of making sure that they're present.
I think in some regards, my generation has felt where it's been a but instead of an and. So devaluing their contributions and not really having a real engagement that was impactful. Miranda, are there any entities involved with deep Black funders that are specific to younger startup not-for-profits and their mission being specific to their community as far as the generational gap?
So we have awarded grants to organizations who are working with the youth in various capacities as it pertains to STEM. So thinking about the science, technology, engineering, math, and even arts in that space, where they are working directly with youth. Also thinking about organizations that are working with youth around food insecurities, healthy eating, also thinking about the social justice arm in terms of the advocacy side of it. So we have been able to provide funding to organizations that are working directly with youth in terms of providing programming that ideally should put them in position to thrive, whether it's through developing a skill, increased education, and so forth.
Mhm.
Have you found that there are young people who want to organize not-for-profits to be the service provider to their generation?
That's a good question. So I wear two hats. So I wear the Black Funders of St. Louis hat, but then also through my coaching and consulting firm. There are definitely young leaders who are looking to create their own path and press forward. And so I definitely have heard from different individuals of like the desire to want to start a nonprofit or to start a movement that is really focused around their generation. And so I think that, like I said earlier, the young people, they need a voice, consistency, and we really have to allow them to lead.
Mhm.
So we have a question from one of our participants who made inquiry, and I don't know that this is anyone on our panel's specialty, but they're saying that there has been talk of a second stimulus. How would a second stimulus package affect your target audience, your target supporters, or entities that you support? So more
Well,
money.
my hope is that people would use it to further their education, particularly in jobs that would provide not just a living wage, but upward mobility and financial growth and reward. So that's, benefit to the industry that I'm in.
Anyone else
Okay.
want to comment on that question?
Yes, I would think along with what Vanessa just shared, to use that funding to, satisfy some of your basic needs. And the basic needs aren't always material needs, but to use that money to help strengthen your base and help, provide the necessities for you and your family to be able to transition through all of this, because the stimulus is for a period of time. But none of us know how long we're going to be involved in this COVID pandemic and some of the other things that are going on in our world today. So that would be my thought. Invest in your own personal growth and development, but sustaining your family and the needs that are there for you.
Another question is, how do you think the young people's voices will impact the voting season? Should we expect some upset in November?
My hope is that the turnout is greater. I just want to see more participation. I do have some concerns around voter suppression, and my own personal prayer is that, whatever it takes come August, we have elections leading up to November that we have to participate in. So I don't miss elections. I vote in local, every election I'm voting, that no matter what the circumstance is for us to vote, that we stay the course and make sure that our vote is counted.
And one thing just to add to that, Vanessa, like one thing, like with Black Funders of St. Louis. So August is also Black Philanthropy Month. And so that's our grant cycle. And so we're looking at civic engagement. And so to that question around like young people getting to the polls, will there be an upset if they don't show up or whatnot? I think it's really important that we think about this from a local as well as national level. And so we are wanting to award grants to organizations that are focused on civic engagement, because that is a big piece of it. You know, Kaylee brought up earlier, the hard to reach population. There are groups that can reach people. And so what needs to happen, the resources need to go to those groups that can get to the people. Unfortunately, the money is sometimes going to groups who I personally like to say poverty pimping. The money's going over there, but they're not doing the work. And the people who are doing the work are under-resourced. And so with the civic engagement piece, it's really important to make sure that we put money behind it, and so that the word can get to the community, so that we can do the outreach, so that we can get the people to the polls, young people included.
Senior, we have a question that maybe you can give a reference for in your entity. Someone asks, aside from paying bills, if a second stimulus should occur, should they look to pay down student debt or start an emergency fund?
So, you know, I think that would be, you know, a personal decision and option. But certainly, yes, paying down debt would be key. But also, we talked earlier about, you know, some of the social determinants in our communities, and that's being unbanked and maybe not having bank accounts or savings accounts. Maybe take that money and invest in that. So yes, but you know, there's other options. It's a personal choice, you know, and each individual family knows what their needs are, and look for how you can sustain yourself and help transition yourself out of circumstances, as opposed to being mired in for a short-term reward, if you will.
So can each of you share how our listeners and others who will tune in can engage the resources that you offer?
Sure, I'll start, Vanessa, because you've been number one a lot. Black Funders of St. Louis, as I mentioned earlier, we are always looking for members. We're always looking for individuals who want to get involved, whether it's through their time and their talent. They may want to become a member. They may want to make a donation. We need everyone. This movement is big. As you can see from today's webinar, there are a lot of needs. And so I am a firm believer that we have assets within our own community that we can build from. And so how do we collectively pull our resources? And so if you are interested in learning more about Black Funders of St. Louis, whether it's through giving your time and talent, becoming a member, or making a donation, you can visit our website, which is www.blackfunders with the STL.com. We're on social media, both Instagram and Facebook, as Black Funders STL. We post information about upcoming events, about our grant cycles. More webinars are to come. We'll have information available there, but feel free to connect with us through social media or visit our website at blackfundersstl.com.
You know, and I would kudo that. You know, we have resources, we have funding to be able to help support families in need. So please reach out to us and contact us on our website, and we have other social media sites as well, but CAASTLC.org is CAASTL's website. 314-863-0015 is our phone number. But again, reach out and, you know, apply for support. We have the funding, and we're looking to serve more individuals, particularly, and I will say again, in the utility assistance area. You know, a lot of the major utilities, you know, they discontinued disconnection notices for a period of time during COVID. Well, those disconnection notices are going to be going out, and utility companies are going to be doing what they do, right, in terms of their business. So we can help with that. We can help relieve some of that financial burden if you're income eligible and you reach out to us for support. And I would just encourage everyone, my colleagues talked about it, but we need to make certain that young people and people beyond that point get out and vote, and participate in the census. Those are critical areas that we need to be present. We have ancestors that died for us to be able to do that and to exercise those rights. And so I would encourage that we encourage, and we need to encourage young people with that voice. And if they're not eligible to vote, to encourage, family members to get out and vote and be counted.
Vanessa, can
That's
you?
more than what you asked for, but.
I know. And the census is something that we definitely need to have more awareness and education on. So thank you for bringing that up. So Vanessa, as far as Harris Stowe, will they be enrolling in class students, or can you give us some insight about what's to come with academia in this upcoming semester?
Absolutely. We are still working on our plan for fall. We will definitely be open and accepting students. We will have likely hybrid of in-person, no matter what we decide, in-person and or online. The safety of our students and faculty and staff is number one. So the best place to go is to our website, hssu.edu, for the latest information and how we're responding to COVID and what's available for continuing your education.
So stats with HBCUs. I know that our HBCUs put out a high number of Black college graduates. Is that what are the main or the top 3 reasons for us to be engaged with Stowe State University and to see that as a gem for our community?
We have excellent programming in math and STEM. And so training people to go into jobs that are upwardly mobile and definitely pay a living wage. Location, we're in the heart of Midtown. We are the only HBCU in the St. Louis region, and I think that matters. And then third, we've got a great team, great leadership team, great students, great culture, and we love very deeply to be part of this community. We're a good community partner.
Well, you guys have been phenomenal. I've learned a lot, and thank you for sharing that with our listeners. We got phone numbers and everything and websites that we will list on our website. I understand this is our first time out for Twitter Live, so visit us on Twitter at Tagged Tribe. That's TAGGEDTRIBE. And connect with us on Facebook at Tribe All Good. And we hope to gain more insight about the services and the support that you offer to our communities and share that with our participants as well. So I thank you each for your commitment to our communities, because we're all stronger for it. There's a lot of work to be done. So those who are looking for a way to engage and to be supportive, I'm sure there's some volunteer and opportunities with all of your agencies as well that they can seek. And if it's just sharing how to register to vote, or how to register to be a student, or how to engage with a Black non-for-profit. Your work and your history shows that your heart is in it and that you're doers. So thank you for that. I appreciate it, as does TAG. You guys have been tagged.
Well, Kayla, you are a blessing in this community, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate.
I kudo that. Appreciate the opportunity to share and to be with you. And Vanessa, I know you, and Miranda, I have met you, but it's a pleasure to be on this panel with you as well.
Thank you. Same. I feel the same. Thank you for the opportunity to share more about Black Funders of St. Louis and to also be on a panel with awesome Black queens. So I definitely appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you good health and progress in all that you are doing. Good
Thank you.
night.
Same
Thank you.